quiet archive record, tonight we're stepping into a slow unfolding. A conversation that reaches beyond our world, beyond our sky, into the vast, silent darkness between stars. Settle in, let the outside world dissolve, and gently descend into tonight's world. What you're about to hear is an interview, conducted under unusual circumstances. The being who speaks is not human. They call themselves Kael'veth, a name that translates loosely to one who watches the river of time. They belong to a species known as the Observers, an ancient race that has watched Earth for over 12,000 years. They do not interfere. They do not judge. They simply watch and remember. Their existence challenges everything we thought we knew about our place in the universe. For millennia, humanity has gazed at the stars and wondered, are we alone? Have others looked back at us? Have they found us worthy of attention? Or have they dismissed us as insignificant? Tonight, we have an answer. Or rather, we have a conversation. Because the truth, as always, is more complex than a simple yes or no. The meeting took place in a location that cannot be disclosed. The circumstances of how this interview was arranged are themselves mysterious. A chain of events that seemed like coincidence, but felt like something more. An encrypted message, a set of coordinates, a room that had not existed the day before and would not exist the day after. But tonight, for reasons they will explain, Kael'veth has chosen to speak, to answer questions that humanity has wondered about since we first looked up at the stars and asked, are we alone? The answer, it turns out, is no. We never were. This is an interview with an extraterrestrial. The interviewer sits in a small room. The walls are bare. There is a single chair across from them. And in that chair, something that resembles a human, but isn't. Kael'veth is tall, perhaps 7 feet, with limbs that seem slightly too long, proportions that are almost right, but not quite. Their skin carries a faint luminescence, like moonlight trapped beneath the surface, shifting subtly as they move. Their eyes are large and dark, not the black emptiness of horror films, but deep, layered, like looking into a clear night sky and realizing the darkness is actually filled with stars too distant to see clearly. When they speak, their voice is calm, measured, almost musical. There is no menace in it, no condescension, just patience. The patience of something that has learned to take the long view. The interviewer leaned forward slightly. "Thank you for agreeing to this conversation," they said. "I have to admit, I'm not entirely sure where to begin. This is not a situation I ever expected to find myself in." "That is understandable," Kael'veth replied, their voice soft yet resonant. "Your species has imagined this moment countless times. In your stories, your films, your quiet thoughts at night when sleep won't come, and the mind wanders to large questions. The reality is always different from the imagination, simpler in some ways, more complex in others. Begin wherever feels natural. I am patient. I have been patient for a very long time." "All right," said the interviewer. "Let's start with the obvious. Who are you? What are you?" "I am Kael'veth," the being answered. "That is not my name in the way humans understand names. It is more like a description, a function. I am what your language might call an observer. My species has existed for, by your measurement of time, approximately 900 million years. We have watched many worlds, many species, many risings and many fallings. We are archivists of a sort, keepers of memory. The universe forgets so much. We try to remember. The interviewer paused, trying to grasp the number. 900 million years. That's difficult to comprehend. Humanity's entire history is a tiny fraction of that. Yes, Kael'veth acknowledged. Your species measures its recorded history in thousands of years. Your planet measures its history in billions. We exist somewhere in between, old enough to have seen patterns repeat across countless worlds, young enough to still find wonder in new variations. We are not the oldest things in the universe, not by a considerable margin, but we are old enough to have perspective. And you've been watching Earth specifically, asked the interviewer, for 12,000 of your years. Yes, said Kael'veth, since your last great ice began to retreat and your civilizations began to bloom in the warming lands. We found you curious. You developed differently than most species we had observed. Differently how? The observer considered the question. Most intelligent species develop along predictable paths. They either advance technologically, building outward into the physical universe, mastering matter and energy, or they develop spiritually, turning inward, exploring consciousness, meaning, connection to the larger whole. Rarely both. Rarer still do we see species where individuals contain both impulses simultaneously. The urge to build and the urge to understand, the drive to conquer and the yearning to transcend. Your kind seems perpetually at war with yourselves, torn between reaching outward to the stars and inward to the soul. It made you fascinating to observe, unpredictable, dangerous perhaps, but fascinating. Why are you speaking now? The interviewer pressed. After 12,000 years of silence, why break it tonight? Because you are approaching what we call the threshold, Kael'veth explained. Every intelligent species encounters it eventually. A point where their power outpaces their wisdom. A point where the choices they make will determine whether they flourish across the ages or fade into the long silence like so many before them. You are very close to that point now, perhaps the closest you have ever been. That sounds ominous, said the interviewer. It is not meant to frighten you, the being replied gently. Fear would not serve you here. The threshold is not a doom. It is simply a test, a transition. Like the moment a child becomes an adult, or a caterpillar becomes a butterfly. Something ends, something new begins. But the form of what emerges, that depends on the choices made in the crucible. Every species must face this alone. That is the nature of the test. But we thought, perhaps, a conversation might help, not to give answers. We cannot do that, but to offer perspective, a view from outside. Sometimes that is what is needed most. Why us? Asked the interviewer. Why humanity specifically? Kael'veth's luminescent skin shifted subtly. You ask as if we chose you from a catalogue. We did not. We watch many worlds simultaneously, hundreds at any given moment, thousands over the long years. You are not unique in receiving our attention, but you are interesting. The contradictions I mentioned earlier, the way you contain such capacity for destruction and such capacity for beauty, often in the same individuals, sometimes in the same moment. We have seen species that were purely good by your standards, gentle, cooperative, harmonious. They tended to stagnate. We have seen species that were purely aggressive. They tended to self-destruct quickly. You are neither. You are a volatile mixture, and volatile mixtures can either explode or fuel journeys to places nothing else can reach. You said you've been watching for 12,000 years, the interviewer continued. What does that actually mean? How do you watch? Do you have ships in orbit, hidden bases, agents living among us? We exist in ways that are difficult to explain in your language, Kael'veth said. Your words assume certain things about the nature of space and matter that are incomplete. We can observe without presence in the way you understand presence. We can perceive without detection. Think of it as listening to a song from another room. We hear the melody, sense the emotions, understand the movements of the musicians, but we do not disturb the performance. We are audience, not participants. But you said you've walked among us, the interviewer pointed out. That sounds like participation. At times, yes, the observer admitted. When direct observation serves a purpose that remote observation cannot. We have walked your streets, sat in your temples and churches and mosques, listened to your conversations in marketplaces and palaces and humble homes. You would not have noticed us. We have ways of appearing, unremarkable, forgettable. The stranger you passed on the street whose face you cannot quite recall. The figure at the edge of the crowd that seemed to belong and then was simply gone. That's unsettling, said the interviewer. The idea that we've been watched so closely without knowing. I understand why it might feel that way, Kael'veth responded. Privacy is important to your species. You build walls and close doors and guard your secrets fiercely. But consider, we have never harmed you, never taken anything from you, never interfered with your choices or your development. We simply watched. We simply remembered. Is observation itself harmful? Is being seen a wound? The interviewer considered this. I suppose it depends on what you do with what you observe. A wise answer, said the being. What we do is remember. We are archivists, as I said, keepers of history. The universe is vast and time is long and so much is lost. Species rise and fall like waves on an infinite ocean. Civilizations build wonders and then crumble into dust. Ideas that took millennia to develop vanish when the last mind that holds them flickers out. We try to prevent that loss. When your species is gone, whether in 1,000 years or 100 million, we will remember you. Your stories, your struggles, your triumphs and failures. They will not be lost to the void. Someone will remember that humans existed and what they were and what they tried to become. When our species is gone, the interviewer repeated. You say that so casually, as if it's inevitable. I do not mean it casually, Kael'veth clarified. I say it truthfully, which is different. All species end eventually. This is not tragedy. It is simply the nature of things. Stars are born and die. Galaxies form and dissipate. Species rise and fall. The universe itself will one day grow cold and still. To rage against this is to rage against the nature of existence. What matters is not the ending. Every story ends. But what happens before it? What you create, what you become, what you leave behind in the minds of those who continue. What have you seen? Asked the interviewer. In 12,000 years of watching us. So much, Kael'veth replied, and something like wonder entered their voice. More than I could convey in 1,000 conversations like this one. We have seen your great pyramids rise from nothing but human hands and human will. Thousands upon thousands of workers moving millions of stones with nothing but determination and ingenuity. We have seen your empires bloom and crumble like flowers in fast motion. The Egyptians, the Romans, the Mongols, the British, each believing themselves eternal, each now footnotes in your own history books. We have seen your philosophers reach toward truths that even older species struggle to grasp. Laozi and Plato and the Buddha, sitting in quiet rooms, thinking thoughts that would echo through millennia. And we have seen your warriors unleash cruelties that made us look away. Even we, who have observed so much suffering across so many worlds. You looked away, the interviewer asked, surprised. There have been moments, Kael'veth said slowly. Your wars, your genocides, your systematic cruelties, where even we, who have watched countless worlds through countless ages, found it difficult to observe. Not because we had not seen such things before. Intelligence often develops alongside capacity for destruction, but because we had seen them, because we knew where such paths lead, because we could see the choices being made, could see the suffering being caused, and we could not intervene. That is perhaps the hardest part of watching, knowing that intervention would make things worse, knowing that you must find your own way through the darkness. Why not? Pressed the interviewer. If you have the power to watch us, surely you have the power to help us, to stop the worst atrocities, to guide us away from destruction. We do have that power, the observer acknowledged, and that is precisely why we cannot use it. A species that is saved from its own choices never learns to make better ones. A child who is never allowed to fall never learns to walk. We have seen what happens when older species interfere with younger ones. The results are invariably worse than the original suffering. Dependence develops. Resentment builds. The younger species never quite believes in itself, never quite develops the confidence and capability that comes from solving your own problems. You must find your own way. That is the only path that leads forward. But surely some intervention could help, the interviewer argued. Sharing technology, medical knowledge, ways to prevent suffering. This seems logical, Kael'veth said, and it has been tried by others, not us, but other species who felt as you do, who believed that sharing knowledge was an unambiguous good. The results were always destructive. Technology without wisdom is merely more efficient destruction. Medical knowledge without ethical development leads to overpopulation, resource depletion, societal collapse. Every gift becomes a curse when received before the recipient is ready for it. Your own history shows this. When your more technologically advanced civilizations encountered your less developed ones, was the result beneficial? Or was it devastation and displacement and the destruction of entire cultures? Have you ever broken that rule? Asked the interviewer. Ever intervened despite the cost? There was a long pause. Kael'veth's dark eyes seemed to deepen, reflecting light that wasn't visible in the room. Once, the being said, finally, long ago, a species on a world far from here faced extinction. Not from their own choices, but from a cosmic event they could not have predicted or prevented. An asteroid, to use your terminology, though the reality was more complex. They had done nothing wrong. They had not earned their destruction. And we decided to help. We saved them, moved them to a new world, protected them until they could protect themselves. That sounds like a good thing, said the interviewer. A mercy. It was meant to be, Kael'veth replied, and for a time it seemed to be. They survived, they flourished in their new home. They remembered us as saviors, as gods, as the hand that reached down from the heavens and lifted them from oblivion, and that was the beginning of the end for them. How so? Asked the interviewer. A species that knows it was saved by higher powers never fully believes in itself, the observer explained. Every challenge they faced, they waited for us to solve. Every crisis, they looked to the sky for rescue. When we did not appear, they grew confused, resentful. Their theology fractured into those who believed we were testing them, those who believed we had abandoned them, those who believed we had never truly existed. Civil wars erupted, generations of conflict. They eventually destroyed themselves, not from the cosmic threat we saved them from, but from the knowledge that they had needed saving at all. We learned then that the greatest gift we can give is the opportunity to succeed or fail on your own terms. The struggle is the point. The struggle is where growth happens. I have to ask the question everyone listening is wondering, said the interviewer. What do you think of us? Honestly, after 12,000 years of observation, what is your assessment of humanity? That is a complicated question, Kael'veth replied. You are a complicated species, perhaps the most complicated we have observed. Try, the interviewer urged. Give me your honest assessment. When I look at humanity, the being began slowly. I see contradiction made flesh. You are capable of breathtaking cruelty and breathtaking kindness, sometimes in the same individual, sometimes in the same moment. You destroy your world while writing poetry about its beauty. You wage wars in the name of peace. You build walls while yearning for connection. You know that material possessions will not bring happiness, and yet you spend your lives accumulating them. You know that life is precious and brief, and yet you waste it on trivialities. You are confusing, deeply, persistently confusing. That doesn't sound like a compliment, the interviewer observed. It is not meant as criticism either, said Kael'veth. I state what I observe. Contradiction is not weakness. It is complexity. Simple species are predictable. They rise, they stabilize, they reach a steady state and remain there until some external force destroys them. Complicated species are unpredictable. They might destroy themselves in spectacular fashion. They might transcend their limitations in ways no one could foresee. You are one of the most complicated species we have ever observed. That makes you dangerous, yes. It also makes you promising. The same capacity for contradiction that could doom you could also save you. What do you see as our greatest strength? Asked the interviewer. Your capacity for love, the observer answered without hesitation. Not romantic love alone, though that is part of it, but your ability to extend care beyond yourselves, beyond your immediate families, beyond your tribes and nations. We've seen humans risk their lives for complete strangers, sacrifice comfort and safety for abstract principles, choose kindness when cruelty would have been easier and more immediately rewarding. This is not common in the universe. Most species love only their own, their families, their groups, their kind. You have the capacity to love everything, to feel compassion for other species, for the planet itself, even in your science fiction, for alien beings you have never met. This capacity for universal compassion is rare. It is precious. It may be what saves you. And our greatest weakness? The interviewer asked. Your memory, Kael'veth said. Or rather, your lack of it. You forget your own lessons with astonishing speed, generation after generation. You repeat the same mistakes, the same wars over the same territories and resources, the same oppressions of the same outgroups, the same short-sighted destructions of the same environments. You know better. Your ancestors learned better. They wrote books and built monuments and carved warnings in stone. But somehow, the knowledge does not transfer. Each generation begins almost fresh, making the same errors, paying the same prices, dying in the same preventable ways. It is frustrating to observe, heartbreaking even. You are so close to understanding again and again, and then you forget. Why do you think that is? Asked the interviewer. Your brains evolved for immediate survival, not long-term wisdom, Kael'veth explained. You are exquisitely adapted to notice threats and opportunities in your immediate environment. You are poorly adapted to understand threats and opportunities that unfold over decades or centuries. You discount the future in favor of the present. You prioritize the visible over the invisible, the personal over the statistical. These biases served you well when you lived in small groups on the savannah. They serve you poorly now that your choices affect billions and echo across generations. The interviewer shifted to a lighter tone. Here's a different kind of question. What's the most baffling human behavior? Something that just confuses your species completely? For the first time, something like amusement crossed Kael'veth's features. A subtle shift in the luminescence of their skin. A movement of the eyes that might, in a human, be called a smile. Your relationship with time, the being said. You know with absolute certainty that your lives are finite, that each moment is precious and unreturning, that the clock is always ticking down, and yet you spend vast portions of those limited moments doing things you do not enjoy, with people you do not like, for reasons you do not believe in. You postpone joy. You delay meaning. You tell yourselves that you will do the important things later, when circumstances are better, when you have more resources, when you are less busy. But later never comes. Circumstances are never perfect. And then you die, having spent your one life preparing to live rather than living. We find this baffling, genuinely incomprehensible. That's painfully accurate, the interviewer admitted. I do not say it to cause pain, Kael'veth said gently, only to illuminate. You have this one life, this one precious, finite, unrepeatable existence, and so many of you spend it as if you have forever, as if there will always be time later. As if the important things can wait. They cannot. They never could. Do you have a favorite human invention? Asked the interviewer. Something that impressed or surprised you? Music, the observer answered immediately. Without question, music. Many species develop language as a tool for conveying information. Many develop mathematics as a way of understanding patterns. These are almost universal among intelligent life. But music, the deliberate arrangement of sounds to create emotional response, the construction of patterns in time that serve no practical purpose but simply feel beautiful. This is rare, and humans have developed it to a degree we have seldom seen elsewhere. Your composers, your singers, your players of instruments, they create something that transcends language, transcends culture, transcends even species. We have observed many of your concerts, your symphonies and operas and humble street performances, your quiet humming while you work, your lullabies to children. It is perhaps the most beautiful thing your species does. Do you have music? The interviewer asked. Your species. Not in the way you do, Kael'veth said. We communicate in ways that include elements of what you might call music, patterns and rhythms and resonances. But we did not invent it for pleasure. We did not create it as an art form, something to be enjoyed for its own sake. You did. You took sound waves and shaped them into cathedrals of emotion. You created beauty for its own sake, with no survival value, no practical purpose, simply because beauty was possible and you yearned for it. That is remarkable. That capacity for pure creation, for making something new simply because it is beautiful. This gives us hope for you. Have you tried human food? Asked the interviewer. What do you think of it? We do not consume matter in the way you do, Kael'veth explained. Our existence is sustained through different means, processes that would be difficult to explain in your language. But we have observed your relationship with food with great interest. It is not merely nutrition for you. It is ritual. It is connection. It is memory and identity and love made edible. A mother preparing her grandmother's recipe is not simply feeding her children. She is transmitting history, maintaining connection with the dead, building bridges across time. We find this beautiful. Food as communion, nourishment as love. What's the strangest human tradition you've observed? The interviewer asked. Something that just makes no sense from an outside perspective. Many of your traditions confuse us, said Kael'veth, but that is not criticism. We understand that traditions serve purposes beyond their surface appearances. But if I had to choose, your relationship with numbers, specifically your belief that certain numbers are lucky or unlucky. You build hotels without 13th floors. You fear certain digits while celebrating others. The numbers themselves are arbitrary symbols, and yet you invest them with power. You change your behavior based on sequences of digits. This seems irrational, and yet we have observed that belief shapes reality for you in measurable ways. Those who believe they are lucky perform better than those who believe they are unlucky. The belief itself becomes a kind of truth. This is something we still struggle to understand. What about our movies? The interviewer continued. Our stories about aliens? I imagine some of them are pretty far off from reality. We have observed many of your films, the observer said. They are entertaining, mostly inaccurate, but entertaining nonetheless. You tend to imagine extraterrestrials as either monsters or saviors, threats to be defeated or wisdom to be acquired, invaders with death rays or wise beings descending with gifts and guidance. The truth is more mundane in some ways, more complex in others. We are simply different, neither your enemy nor your God, just other. Other beings on other worlds trying to understand the same vast, confusing universe you are trying to understand. Any favorites? Asked the interviewer. Any films that got something right? There is a film where a small alien is stranded on your world and befriended by children, Kael'veth recalled. The alien is not a warrior or a sage, simply a being far from home, frightened and lost, wanting nothing more than to return to its own kind. The children help without expecting reward. Connection forms despite difference. It ends with farewell, with hope, with the understanding that distance does not end relationship. This one felt true, not literally accurate to our experience, but emotionally true. The longing it captures, the possibility of understanding across vast difference, the way kindness can bridge any gap. This is real. This is something we have seen in the universe. What about the scarier films? The interviewer asked. The ones where aliens are the villains? These confuse us more than offend us, said Kael'veth. You seem to believe that any species more advanced than yours would necessarily want to harm you, to steal your resources, enslave your people, harvest your bodies for strange purposes. But consider, what could we possibly want from you that we could not more easily obtain elsewhere? The universe is vast beyond imagining, filled with resources beyond counting. Your little planet is not special in material terms. What you have that is valuable is yourselves, your consciousness, your creativity, your unpredictable combination of qualities. And those cannot be taken by force. They can only be shared freely. Any species advanced enough to reach you is advanced enough to have no need for conquest. The interviewer smiled. Is there an alien equivalent of a dad joke? Kael'veth's expression shifted again, that subtle, luminescent movement that might be amusement. Humor exists in many forms across many species, the being said. We have our own traditions of wordplay, incongruity, absurdity. What you call dad jokes, humor that is deliberately simple, groan-inducing, meant to provoke response through its very lack of sophistication. This pattern exists in others as well. One of our forms involves statements that seem profound, but are actually empty tautologies. The closest translation would be something like, the universe is vast because of all the space it contains. That's actually pretty good, the interviewer laughed. I have had many thousands of years to practice, Kael'veth replied. The question everyone wants answered, said the interviewer. Are there others, besides you and your kind? Is the universe full of life, or are we nearly alone? The universe is vast beyond your comprehension, Kael'veth said, and it is full of life, not in every corner. Space is mostly empty, cold, hostile to complexity, but in enough places, around enough stars, on enough worlds. Millions of species exist at this moment. Billions have existed before. Billions more will come after. Millions, the interviewer repeated, astonished. Right now, as we speak. Right now, the observer confirmed. Most are simpler than you. Organisms without what you would call consciousness or intelligence. Life as chemistry, responding to environment, reproducing, evolving, but not wondering about its own existence. Some are comparable to you, struggling with their own versions of your challenges, asking their own versions of your questions, approaching their own versions of the threshold. A few are older, like us, observers or participants in the greater cosmic community, and a very few are something else entirely, something we do not fully understand even after all our ages of watching. That's terrifying and wonderful at the same time, said the interviewer. That is an appropriate response, Kael'veth agreed. The cosmos is both terrifying in its vastness, in the recognition that you are one tiny spark in an infinite dark, wonderful in its richness, in the understanding that existence has produced such abundance, such variety, such impossible complexity. You are not alone. You have never been alone. But you are also not the center of anything. You are one story among countless stories. This can feel diminishing, recognizing that the universe does not revolve around you, that your struggles are not the main event, or it can feel liberating, understanding that your failures are not catastrophic, that your mistakes are not the end of everything, that the cosmos continues regardless of what you do or fail to do. The choice in how to receive this truth is yours. What about consciousness? Asked the interviewer. What is it? Where does it come from? Surely with 900 million years of existence, you must have answers. This is a question we still ask ourselves, Kael'veth admitted. After all our ages of existence, consciousness remains mysterious to us. We know it emerges from complexity, that when matter is arranged in certain ways, awareness arises. Atoms combine into molecules, molecules into structures, structures into systems, and somewhere in that escalating complexity, the universe begins to experience itself. Something begins to have an inside, something begins to feel. But why? How? The mechanism we can describe, the meaning escapes us. Do you have theories? Asked the interviewer. Many theories, the observer said. Perhaps consciousness is fundamental to the universe itself, a property as basic as gravity or electromagnetism, woven into the fabric of reality from the beginning. Perhaps it is emergent, arising naturally whenever complexity reaches certain thresholds, an inevitable consequence of information processing. Perhaps it is something else entirely, something our categories cannot capture, something that will require concepts we have not yet developed to understand. We genuinely do not know, and this humbles us. After 900 million years, we are still asking the same basic question that a human child asks when they first realize they are looking out from behind their eyes. What is this? Why am I here? What does it mean to be something rather than nothing? Is death what we think it is? The interviewer asked quietly. What happens when we die? This is a question we are asked often by many species at many stages of development, said Kael'veth. Everyone wants to know what lies beyond the ending. I will tell you what we have observed, though it may not satisfy you. Consciousness does appear to be connected to the physical substrate that generates it. When the brain ceases to function, the consciousness that arose from it ceases to function as well. This is what we observe. That sounds final, said the interviewer, hopeless even. Does it? Kael'veth replied gently. Consider another perspective. The matter that makes up your body was forged in the hearts of ancient stars. The atoms in your hand were once part of cosmic furnaces, part of planets, part of other living things. After you die, those atoms will continue their journey, becoming soil, becoming plants, becoming other beings, eventually returning to the stars from which they came. You are not a static thing. You are a pattern, temporarily imposed on matter that existed before you and will exist after you. The pattern ends. The substance continues. But the consciousness, the self, that ends, the interviewer pressed. As far as we can observe, yes, said the observer. But I will say this. We do not understand consciousness well enough to make absolute pronouncements. There may be aspects we cannot detect, continuations we cannot perceive. Many species have intuitions of something beyond physical death, memories of past lives, connections with departed loved ones, experiences that suggest consciousness is more than mere brain function. We cannot confirm these intuitions, but we cannot definitively deny them either. The mystery remains. Do our choices actually matter? Asked the interviewer. On a cosmic scale, does anything we do make any difference? This is perhaps the most important question you have asked, Kael'veth said, and something like intensity entered their voice. And the answer is yes, absolutely yes. Your choices matter, not because the cosmos keeps score or judges or rewards, but because choices create reality. Every decision you make shapes what exists. Kindness creates more kindness. Cruelty creates more cruelty. Understanding creates the conditions for further understanding. The universe you live in tomorrow is being built by the choices everyone makes today. You are not separate from the cosmos, observing it from outside. You are part of it, creating it moment by moment. Your choices matter because they are the substance of reality. Do you believe in God? The interviewer asked. There was another long pause. Kael'veth seemed to consider the question carefully, turning it over as if examining it from multiple angles. We believe in something, the being said finally. The universe is too ordered, too beautiful, too precisely calibrated for existence to be purely random. The physical constants that allow matter to form, the laws that permit complexity to emerge, the improbable chain of events that leads from hydrogen to consciousness. There is a profound structure here, an elegance that suggests design, or at least intentionality of some kind. But, prompted the interviewer, but whether that ordering principle is what you call God. Kael'veth continued, whether it is personal, whether it has preferences, whether it cares about individual beings, whether it has intentions in any sense you would recognize, these we cannot say. We sense something behind reality, a pattern beneath the patterns, a meaning beneath the meanings, but we cannot name it or know it any better than you can. Our ignorance is deeper than yours, only because we have had longer to discover how much we do not understand. That's surprisingly humble, the interviewer observed. Age teaches humility, said Kael'veth. The more we learn, the more we discover we do not know. Young species often believe they will eventually understand everything, that knowledge accumulates toward completeness, that science will one day close the book and declare all questions answered. Older species know that understanding is infinite, that each answer reveals new questions, that the more you know, the larger the mystery becomes. We have learned to be comfortable with not knowing, to find peace in the questions themselves rather than demanding answers that may not exist. Is there something you're not allowed to tell us? Asked the interviewer. Something forbidden? Some cosmic secret you're keeping? There are things I will not tell you, Kael'veth admitted, not because they are forbidden by some law or authority, but because knowing them too soon would harm you. Some knowledge must be earned through experience. Some truths must be discovered through struggle and growth, not handed over like gifts. If I told you everything, I would rob you of the journey, and the journey is where the growth happens. The answer without the struggle to find it is hollow. That's frustrating, the interviewer said. I know, Kael'veth replied. I understand. The desire to know is powerful, and being told that knowledge is withheld feels like injustice. But consider, if someone had told you everything about your life before you lived it, every triumph and every failure, every love and every loss, every choice and every consequence, would the living have any meaning? Experience is not merely the acquisition of information. It is the feeling of discovery, the struggle of growth, the surprise of the unexpected, the satisfaction of problems solved through your own effort. These have value that mere knowledge does not contain. We do not withhold to punish. We withhold to preserve. The unfolding must unfold. "Tell me more about this threshold," said the interviewer. "What exactly is it? How will we know when we've reached it?" "Every intelligent species, at some point in its development, acquires power that exceeds its wisdom," Kael'veth explained. "The power to destroy itself entirely. The power to reshape its world beyond recognition. The power to reach beyond its home planet into the wider cosmos. This accumulation of power is inevitable. It flows naturally from intelligence, from tool-making, from the problem-solving that defines conscious beings. The question is not whether a species will gain such power. The question is whether they will gain the wisdom to use it well before they use it poorly." "And that's the threshold?" asked the interviewer. "The threshold is the point where these lines cross," the observer said, "where power has grown enough that a single mistake, a single failure of wisdom can end everything. Where the choices made by individuals and groups determine not just their own fate, but the fate of their entire species, their entire world, potentially other worlds beyond. It is not a single moment. It is a passage. Some species pass through it quickly. Others linger in the danger zone for generations. But all must pass through. And we're there now," the interviewer asked. "At that point." "You are standing in it," Kael'veth confirmed. "Your nuclear weapons can end your civilization. Your climate-changing activities are reshaping your biosphere. Your communications technologies connect your entire species, but also amplify your divisions and your madness. Your artificial intelligences grow more capable by the day, promising transformation that could be paradise or catastrophe. You have power that would have seemed godlike to your ancestors of merely 100 years ago. But your wisdom, your ability to use that power well, to govern yourselves, to cooperate, to think long-term, has not kept pace. Your technology is that of young gods. Your wisdom is still that of tribal primates fighting over territory. This gap is the threshold. What happens if we fail? The interviewer asked. There are many ways to fail the threshold, Kael'veth said. Many forms the failure can take. The most dramatic is extinction. A species destroys itself utterly through war, through environmental collapse, through engineered plague or artificial catastrophe, or some combination of accumulated disasters. The planet goes silent, the lights go out, the story ends. And that's the most common failure. It is common, the observer acknowledged, but extinction is not the only failure. Some species survive, but lose what made them vital. They stagnate, becoming something less than they were, enduring but not truly living. They find a stable state that preserves their existence but forecloses their growth. They become like insects in amber, unchanging, unquestioning, alive but not fully awake. Others fragment, splitting into factions that evolve separately, losing their common identity, becoming multiple species that no longer recognize each other as kin. Failure takes many forms. Not all failures look like death. Some look like sleep. Some look like forgetting. And if we succeed, asked the interviewer, what does that look like? If you succeed, Kael'veth said, you will begin your true journey. The threshold is not an end. It is a beginning. A species that passes through it has proven something important about itself, that it can govern its own power, that it can think beyond immediate gratification, that it can cooperate at species-wide scale, that it can balance individual freedom with collective responsibility. Such a species gains access to the wider cosmos, not through technology alone, though technology is part of it, but through the wisdom to use that technology well. They begin to explore questions that younger species cannot even formulate. They join a community of others who have passed the same test. They become something more. How many species fail? Asked the interviewer. How many pass? Most fail, said Kael'veth. Not all dramatically. Many simply plateau, never quite destroying themselves, but never quite transcending either. They exist, they endure, but they do not flourish. The threshold is difficult precisely because it requires species to overcome their most basic instincts. Fear evolved to keep you alive in immediate danger, but it makes you terrible at long-term risk assessment. Tribalism evolved to help your ancestors cooperate with their immediate groups, but it makes you terrible at species-wide cooperation. Short-term thinking evolved because your ancestors needed to secure food for today before worrying about next year, but it makes you terrible at addressing challenges that unfold over decades or centuries. Everything that made you successful as animals works against you now. You must overcome yourselves. That is the test. What can we do? Asked the interviewer. How do we pass? Surely there must be some guidance you can offer. I cannot give you a formula, the observer said. There is no universal answer. Each species must find its own way, shaped by its own nature, its own history, its own particular configuration of strengths and weaknesses. But I can tell you what I have observed in species that succeed. They learn to think long-term, to consider the welfare of generations not yet born, to make sacrifices today for benefits that will arrive only after they are gone. They learn to expand their circle of concern, to see all of their kind as one family, then all life on their world, then eventually all life everywhere. They learn to balance individual freedom with collective responsibility, understanding that both are necessary, that neither alone is sufficient. They learn that power without wisdom is destruction, and wisdom without power is impotence, and only the combination moves forward. They find the balance. That is the key. They find the balance. What happens to a species after they pass the threshold? Asked the interviewer. What does existence look like for them? It varies, Kael'veth said. Some become explorers, spreading through the cosmos, establishing themselves on new worlds, eventually becoming something very different from what they were. Some turn inward, finding that the physical universe is less interesting than the inner landscape of consciousness, building civilizations of the mind rather than matter. Some become caretakers, taking on roles like ours, watching younger species, helping in subtle ways that do not violate the necessity of self-development. And some transcend in ways we do not fully understand. They move beyond the physical, beyond the categories we use to organize reality. They become something new, something we cannot describe because we lack the concepts. Will we become like you? The interviewer asked. If we pass? You will become something, Kael'veth replied. What exactly cannot be predicted. Every species that passes the threshold develops in its own direction, shaped by its own nature. You will not become copies of us. You may not even remain recognizable to your current selves. Growth changes things. Transcendence transforms. The humans who pass through the threshold will be connected to the humans of today. But they will also be different in ways that are difficult to imagine from where you currently stand. This is not loss. It is becoming. Are you happy? the interviewer asked. After 900 million years of existence, do you experience something like happiness? We experience contentment, said Kael'veth thoughtfully. Purpose, connection. We would not use the word happy in the way you use it. That specific configuration of emotion is tied to your biology, your neurotransmitters, your particular evolutionary history. But we experience positive states. We find meaning in our watching. We find beauty in the unfolding. We feel something like satisfaction when a species we have observed passes through its threshold. We feel something like sorrow when they fail. We are not empty. We are not cold. We are simply different. That sounds difficult, the interviewer observed. It is. The threshold is meant to be difficult, Kael'veth said. It is a filter, a test of whether a species is ready for the larger universe. Not every kind of being should have access to the power that advanced technology provides. Not every intelligence should spread beyond its homeworld. The cosmos is not cruel, but it is demanding. It does not hand out participation trophies. You must earn your place among the stars. And earning means growing past your limitations, growing into what you have the potential to become. The interview is ending. The light in the room seems softer now, as if the walls themselves have relaxed. Kael'veth's luminescent skin pulses gently, rhythmically, like a slow heartbeat made visible. Is there anything else you want to say? The interviewer asked. Any final message for those who are listening? I would like to speak directly to those who hear these words, Kael'veth said, their voice becoming even softer, even more gentle. To those who are listening in the quiet of their nights, in the space between waking and sleep, letting these words wash over them as they drift toward dreams. The being seemed to lean forward slightly, their dark eyes somehow softer now, as if speaking to each listener individually. You are small, said Kael'veth. I do not say this to diminish you. I say it because it is true, and there is freedom in truth. You are small. One being on one world, in one galaxy, among billions of galaxies, in a universe that may itself be one among infinite universes. Your life is brief, a flicker against the vast darkness, a candle lit and guttered in the blink of a cosmic eye. Your problems, your fears, your struggles, in the cosmic scale, they are barely visible. They are not the center of anything. They are not the most important thing that has ever happened. And yet, you are also infinite. You contain consciousness, the universe looking back at itself, wondering at its own existence, asking questions that the stars themselves cannot ask. Every thought you think has never been thought exactly that way before. Every choice you make ripples outward in ways you cannot see, touching lives you will never know, shaping futures you will never witness. You are small, and you are everything. Both are true, both can coexist. Do not let the vastness of space make you feel insignificant. Let it make you feel free. Your struggles are real, yes. Your pain matters. Your challenges are not illusions to be dismissed. But they are not the whole of existence either. They are not permanent. They are not the final word. Tomorrow exists. Change is possible. You have seen only a tiny fraction of what reality contains, and reality is more vast and strange and beautiful than anything your current perspective can imagine. I have watched your species for 12,000 years. I have seen your darkest moments, the wars that consumed millions, the cruelties that defied comprehension, The moments when it seemed that humanity had chosen destruction over creation, hatred over love, death over life. I have watched and wondered if you would survive, if you would find your way, if you would pass through the darkness into something better. And I have also seen your brightest moments. I have seen humans choose love when hate would have been easier. I have seen them create beauty from suffering, meaning from chaos, hope from despair. I have seen them reach toward understanding, despite every reason to retreat into fear. I have seen them protect the weak at cost to themselves. I have seen them sacrifice for principles they would never see vindicated. I have seen them be better than they needed to be, kinder than they were required to be, more generous than survival demanded. You are capable of passing the threshold. I do not know if you will. I cannot see your future. It is not written, not determined, not inevitable in either direction. But you are capable. The capacity is there. The potential exists. Whether you will realize it depends on choices not yet made, by individuals not yet born, in circumstances not yet formed. What I want you to know as you drift towards sleep is that you matter, not because you are the center of the universe. You are not. Not because some cosmic plan depends on you specifically. It does not. But because you are conscious, because you can choose, because your choices affect others, rippling outward in ways you cannot track, because the universe is better for your existence, richer for your experience, more complete for your participation. Kael'veth paused, letting the words settle. Sleep now. Let your minds rest from the weight of these thoughts. Tomorrow you will wake and continue your lives. Face your challenges. Make your choices. Some of those choices will be small. Some may be large. All will matter. All will contribute to the unfolding. Let your breathing slow. Let your body sink into comfort. Let the vastness of space hold you rather than overwhelm you. You are cradled in something immense. You are carried by forces older than your sun. You belong here. You were always meant to be here. This moment, this breath, this quiet passage into sleep, this is exactly where you are supposed to be. The stars will continue their ancient dance while you dream. The planets will turn. The galaxies will spiral slowly through the dark. And you will rest. Tomorrow is waiting. But not yet. Not yet. First, rest. Thank you, Kael'veth, said the interviewer softly, for all of this, for speaking when you might have remained silent. Thank you for listening, the observer replied. It is not nothing to be heard. We will continue to watch, and we will continue to hope. Dream of stars tonight. Dream of the vastness that holds you. And when you wake, remember that you are part of something ancient and vast and strange and beautiful. Remember that the cosmos knows you exist. Remember that you are not alone. You never were. The being rose from the chair. For a moment, their skin seemed to glow brighter, luminescence pulsing in waves. And then, like a star fading at dawn, like a dream dissolving as the sleeper wakes, they were gone. The chair was empty. The room was quiet. Only the echo of their words remained. This was a quiet archive story, a conversation across the void between stars, a moment where humanity and something older, something vaster, something impossibly different met in the quiet dark and discovered that understanding, though difficult, was possible. Wherever you are tonight, whatever weighs on your mind, whatever fears or hopes or sorrows you carry into sleep, remember that you are not alone. that the universe is full of life, of consciousness, of stories being told and remembered, that your story matters even if you cannot see how. Where the story ends, sleep begins.